Okay, good evening, everybody. Hope you're all well. Hope you're all good. And hello to everyone in the chat. As I mentioned, a few of you guys were there a bit earlier. Feel free to keep me updated on how Leeds are doing, unless Leeds United start losing, and then I'm not interested at all. So tonight, what we're going to talk about, we are going to discuss whether or not we're running out of time to buy Bitcoin. And I don't necessarily mean as in we're running out of Bitcoin. I'm just talking about, is this the right time of year to be buying Bitcoin? Where are we in that bullish factor of everything else? And we'll kind of explore both sides of this. But again, you know, I'm trying to be super positive when we come to these talks. And I think that's the right thing to be. I think, you know, for now, we seem to be, you know, regaining some of that strength back into the market. I'm talking on a macro point of view, not on an hourly, in case anyone's going to come back at me and say that the market's dumping. But there's definite signs to sort of get excited about, get behind. And if you are a Bitcoin or a crypto bull, then yeah, you know, now is an ideal time to just make sure everything is in the right state that you want it to be in. And then hopefully we can catch that real big tailwind and just start to see how well our portfolios move up. But as I say, we'll run through all of those. Hope everyone can hear me. If you do have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat as we go through. I'll periodically have a look through those. And failing everything else, let's just jump straight in. So what's got me excited? Well, let's face it, when we're looking at Bitcoin, I'll put it on the big screen. Now, this is the 3-day time frame, but you can even see on the 3-day time frame, we've cleared that range that we've been in for 7 months, that top of resistance band. We finally not only cleared it, wicked above it, we've actually closed candles above it. And when we take it onto the weekly, you can actually see there's a fairly strong close above that. Now, yes, 2 days into this weekly candle, we've seen a pullback, but actually for us, we'd like a pullback. We want to see that retest to make sure that we have got that strength. We can build from that and go back up. So, you know, we'll go into it in finer detail a little bit later on, but a fall down to 65, 64,000, as long as we can continue to close above that support line on the weekly, or if we want to drop it back down to the 3-day, you know, sort of closing above here, finding some support and moving on, I think that's going to stand us in a very good stead as to where we can see going through the remainder of this year and hopefully into next year. Let's have a look at some of the other ones. So Casper, I'll enlarge this so you can see it. So Casper, you know, it hasn't been looking great. I know a lot of people have probably got out of Casper. Adam, I'll come to your comment there when I get on to breaking it down into a sort of a more condensed understanding of Bitcoin's price, but thanks for that. Casper, you first look at this, broken down through the support band that we've been, you know, praising for the last 7 months. Last couple of weeks, really kind of struggling with that there. And I know a lot of people got out at Casper last week where the market's moving, and rightly so based off this. It's almost the reverse of what's happened with Bitcoin. And yeah, okay, we might see a move up, but it's got to break this line now. But whilst I was just waiting to go live, I kind of started just redrawing things. I was wondering, actually, what happens now if we move this down here and we look at base support? Actually, it's kind of on base support at the moment. So I wouldn't necessarily rule it out. I'll be honest, I don't like this big gap here. So, you know, that argument for the previous where the line was drawn is better because the bounces had to bounce off something. And where I drew it previously, they bounced off quite nicely. But now that we have made these couple of candles where we are now, you can actually connect this all the way back to June of last year for a longer period of base support. So maybe it's an actual pivotal moment for turning around. For any of you that's still in Casper, maybe there is some hope still to be seen. Again, we'll dive into Casper in more detail a little bit later on when we cover some of the altcoins. And then we have a look at total market cap number 3, which is everything except for Bitcoin and for Ethereum. And actually, I tell you what, this hopefully is showing us what Bitcoin's going to do, because this on the 3-day time frame, we bust through that 7-month trend line for 3 candles, then we corrected all the way back down to that, and then we built off that and we've gone again. So let's just go back to the Bitcoin one. We'll just have I mean, that is almost carbon copy of what we're seeing Bitcoin right now. Bust through 3 green candles through that. Now this one, maybe it does correct all the way back down, builds off it and goes. So there's no guarantee, obviously, just a coincidence. But just looking at how Total 3 has behaved, maybe gives us a little bit of hope as to where Bitcoin can do it. And that breakthrough end of September, I think that probably tied in quite a bit with a lot of meme coin hype and also a lot of movement on the AI related tokens. We then had that correction at the end of the month and it came back down, and that felt quite sudden. It felt quite sharp. We've talked about it this month. It has reacted off that upper support level, resistance level, now be turned into support level, and the movement away from it is pretty good. And again, we'll break it down to small time frames later on, but even on the 3-day, you can kind of see actually it's just snaking its way up this. Couple of greens, corrects, green, correct. So fairly healthy at the moment. There's no, nothing necessarily on this to suggest that actually it could look to break through. I mean, I'm probably making this up as we go along, really. I can't really get a clean cut there. So then what am I doing? I'm maybe drawing this line here and putting it down, but flat top, could it well just break through? So I'm not really going to necessarily use from that. I'm just thinking actually how it is laddering up this at the moment over the last couple of weeks. Fairly happy with where that one is going. And then, of course, just Tau, where it sits right now. So it's been an interesting period for me personally with Tau, because I've been doing the hokey cokey last week or two, just in and out with some side steps. And the last 24 hours has been pretty much like that as well. No major amounts have been moved, but sort of anywhere between 5 and 25, maybe 30% of my pot I've been sort of moving in and out. And I'll have a look when we go into smaller time frames. But ultimately, at the moment, we've had that move up, and this is just a correction. All we're actually doing at the moment is sort of moving back down. And the most important level for me on the higher time frames has to be that 520 level. Sort of this level down here. If I can draw a straight line with my mouse, which obviously I can't. So why don't we just use a tool that is straight? So that level there. And so it only feels natural that probably we will end up moving down that way. And that's where we need to find some sort of support breakthrough. Failing to do that, as you can kind of see, it only took 2 green 3-day candles to go from 325 to, let's just say, 540, 525. So, $200 in 2 candles, half of that, 50% retracement should we lose it. Kind of talking about the low 400s. I don't think it's out of the question, but the real target for me at the moment is what it does in and around 521. I'm going to show you where things sit with fib, price action, all of that later on. Okay, let's jump into a little bit of news. Now, I'll be honest with you, I haven't really been following much of the crypto news recently. My time on crypto Twitter, unfortunately, is taken up with 2 things. The algorithm's got me. It's either the presidential election or it's meme coins at the moment. So a lot of news has probably passed me by. So your benefit, because it might be a little bit of a shorter segment this time. But a couple of things did kind of catch my eye. And the first 2 are kind of the same narrative. We seem to see a lot of, well, not a lot, but we're starting to see the resurgence of negative news articles in and around cryptocurrency or Bitcoin. So we've had the Federal Reserve president sort of suggesting that the only time that cryptocurrencies is ever used, or the 99.9% of the time that cryptocurrencies is used, is for illegal and illicit activities, which unbelievably, has been completely disproven. That was a narrative sort of beginning of last bull cycle. And then January of this year, there was actually a report released, I think by the FBI, which sort of confirmed that it's in here. I'm not even going to, 0.34% down here. Let me just move it up so you can see it. A Jan report from Chain Analysis found that just 0.3% of all crypto transactions in 2023 could be linked to any kind of illegal activity. And the highest it's ever got to is 1.29%. Sorry, the highest in the last 6 years is 1.29%. So it just feels like this guy, and let's face it, he is the president of the Federal Reserve, Minneapolis Federal Reserve, but a fairly high-powered individual. Wonder what his, aim or what he gets out of trying to badmouth cryptocurrency at this state, particularly when we think about the US debt and everything else. But we'll leave that one where it is, because funnily enough, the ECB have also come out to say that actually it's unfair, Bitcoin, because what happens is when Bitcoin rallies, anyone that hadn't got into Bitcoin early financially suffers. And so they're sort of saying that actually we should be bringing in laws against Bitcoin. And they sort of go on to say, where is it in here? Since Bitcoin does not increase the productive potential of the economy, the consequences of the assumed continued increase in value are essentially redistributive, i.e., the wealth effects on consumption of early Bitcoin holders can only come at the expense of the rest of society. If the price of Bitcoin rises for good, the existence of Bitcoin impoverishes, I can't say that word, both non-holders and latecomers. Now, I think that's pretty much the same for the entire financial market, well, certainly when you look at stocks and shares, because generally those who own stocks earlier on hold on to them. They sell them when they want to sell to make money to those that are willing to buy. It's that whole greater fool theory. Yet they don't bother mentioning that about the traditional markets. No, it's just Bitcoin that's bad. It's Bitcoin that's ruining the poor people, because when they do decide that they need to buy into it, and I mean, you could read between the lines here to suggest that they're even suggesting that that is what ultimately we're going to have to head towards. It's going to be those that got in early. They're going to make all the money. Well, yeah, hopefully so, because I would still class us as generally quite early, and that's what we're here to do. But just more articles like this, just trying to put that negative spin in and around on Bitcoin. And, you know, the timing's interesting in terms of entering Q4. I don't want to say they've done it just because of October, but generally in the 4-year cycle, the October of that third year is when we start to see that rally and that move up, as we've talked about a couple of times this month. And so, yeah, the timing of these is interesting. The other thing, the news that kind of did catch my eye, and it was on Twitter, was Tesla. Not Elon Musk. They have to put his name in front of Tesla so everyone knows it's important. Tesla actually moved $760 million worth of Bitcoins. First time they've done it since 2022. Now, they didn't sell it. They just moved it. But that kind of got everyone a little bit nervous, actually. Everyone thinking, well, what's Tesla doing? I think they're either the third or the fourth largest corporation holder, or largest corporation holder. That's probably the best way of aligning those words, in the world. So, you know, they have, I think it's 11,500 Bitcoin. And so the concern is that the last time Tesla moved a large amount of money is when they dumped it, or actually suggesting that it's not good for the environment and they're not going to get back in until mining becomes more environmentally friendly. And so the worry now is, well, are they moving the money around because they are going to sell off again, and they are going to sell off at such a large amount, and it being Elon and it being Tesla and then being the fourth largest holder, it's just going to have a snowball effect of creating further panic in the market and driving that one down. Now, hey, I'm not here to make an assessment of what they're doing, just the fact that they were moving it. If you weren't aware of that, just thought it was quite interesting. You can follow it on Arkham. So here's all the dashboards. As you can see, last week they started moving everything, and spoiler alert, I mean, I scroll, it's all 1 week's worth, and then it drops to 2 years. So that's kind of how people have understood it. What I did find interesting was even good old Tesla sending test amounts. Okay, test amounts there, $3, $3, $3. They don't want to mess up sending $760 million worth of Bitcoin. And I haven't bothered following the wallet, so I don't know how many times over the 4 pages worth of transfers they've gone into duplicate wallets or whatever, but you can kind of have a look at it there. And the token balances, you can kind of see at one stage, 2021, that's April 21, 44,000. Then they sold a little bit off just prior to the crash, or the all-time high in April, and then the crash in May. And then they had that, you know what, we don't like it. We're not accepting Bitcoin as payments for Tesla anymore. And we're quite anti-Bitcoin. We're going to sell a whole load because it's environmentally unfriendly. And that's what happened. And we kind of know what happened in 2022 with FTX and everybody else dragging the price even further down. But Tesla potentially had their share to play in that one. Anyway, I think enough of the news, because like I said, I didn't follow too much of it. And Adam, I'll get around to yours now, because we're going to talk about Bitcoin. Let's get it on the 12-hour initially. So here it is, standard chart. You should all know by now what everything here represents. And what I still find quite interesting is, yes, over the last week, we've had that move up. We did break 67, 68,000. We actually got to about 69,500, and it was just below this level of liquidity before we started to roll over, and we've come back down. And again, here we are. We were battling the 786 level, and that's exactly what we've been battling since losing it. And staying below that, for me, really, 618, which obviously is my absolute favorite anyway, kind of is starting to scream out to us. Now, okay, that aligning with this is at 63,300. I was talking about 64,000 from a three-day time frame to a weekly time frame of somewhere that we want to see. But actually, now that we've zoomed in on a 12-hour, there is a lot to suggest that actually that 63,000, not just at a fib level, but in terms of, you know, price action, interaction in and around it, there's plenty there. And so even if you didn't want to use it as an exact number, I think we could quite fairly just put a bit of a band here. Don't know why that's in red. Looks pretty hideous. Kind of taking out a few other wicks and bodies above it, and suddenly we actually then do hit that 64. So anyway, that $1,000 range, 64,000, 63,000, I think could be a very logical place to go. I actually think it'd still be a fairly healthy move, in my opinion. Now, going on to what Adam was saying, put it onto the, I'll tell you what, let's get a clean chart. I'll go back to this one. And because what Adam was suggesting, I think based on the weekly, get it there, is we were just, you know, forming this downtrend here. And we continue down. You've gone, it's a lower high though at the moment. I actually, you know, I don't know what time frame you were looking at, but for me, on the weekly, was what we're talking about when you mentioned it. This is a high, this is a break of trend. That was the level. I'll do a ray if I can. This was the previous high. I suppose you've taken the wicks. I accept it. I'm a body man, in more things than one. But yeah, so here we go. So I would have that here at 68. As far as I'm concerned, that is slightly above it, although I will accept your point. Begrudgingly, perhaps? No, I don't think so. That wick there is technically above it there. So the wick does take it out. Now, I just don't really ever do the wicks, but I completely understand what you're suggesting with the wick there. If we take it onto the daily and have a look, I mean, even the daily body is lower than that one. It's the wick on that day that got it up. So fine, I accept that. I'm going to continue with what I was going to say, which is completely different, but what I was mentioning last week. I'm going to do it on this again. Let me just get this clean. Let's leave that. Let's just zoom in so we can all see it a little bit better. Probably a bit too far now. But I'm still sticking at the moment with, yes, we had that downtrend. And we were doing lower highs and lower lows. But actually, for me, everything changed there in August. It takes a lot of time. I went through this last week. But again, we'll use the wicks because it's very close. The body size is very close. Oh, it's this one here. So it's September. So I got excited. They're almost identical. So maybe a double bottom, we could class that. If we do that there, it just, I have to zoom in, but it does technically just go by, what's that? Another $30. But since then, you know, X, rise up, come back down, rise up, come back down, rise up. And so for me, you know, this move down is fine. It doesn't invalidate the potential reversal that we're going through unless we lose 60,000. You know, that would be the level I don't want to see it break, because then suddenly I can't say that we're continuing on the higher highs and higher low trend. And again, 64, taking it in here, I think there's a merit, or there's understanding as to why that could do it, in terms of about a 50% retracement between this move anyway, you know, from 60,000 to 68. I mean, you don't have to take your socks off to work out how much that's going to be, but 64,000 is going to be around about the middle. We see that move there. So I think there's still fairly, you know, there's nothing to be too nervous about, is I suppose what I'm trying to get at. From a much, you know, from a bigger picture, whether you want to look at daily, weekly, 3-day, whatever it is, this is just the growing pains, if you will, of us moving out of a 7-month long, slightly down, but sideways movement. The real, you know, barriers for me, 70K psychological, and then we've got the all-time high. And here, Adam, I will use the wick. because I need it to, because it's the all-time high, 63,822. Sorry, 73. So 74,000 is really what we need to be aiming for. But I'm not suggesting that that needs to happen tomorrow. We could have a leg down here, move up, retest maybe the all-time high rejection, come back down again, and then have a go at it. And before you know it, I mean, the way I've drawn it there, that's kind of Christmas time we're looking at. So there's a bit of time to go with that one. But just going back to where we are on here, we can't, we do come down to 60,000, 63,000. I'd like to think we see a bounce here. That, as in, that's not TA. That's me saying that's what we need is a bounce there. 60,000. It's a 0.5. It still keeps the trend intact. But the other thing, once we get down here, do we wick into this? Do we feed the market makers, take out some of this liquidity that's there, and realistically, this, a lot of this has been eaten because of that wick. And so actually you could argue, yes, it's built up again, but there's kind of almost two boxes of it now. There's this one here, which is all the way back from here. And then there's the bit above it, which is, I don't know why I didn't just duplicate, but you kind of get the point, the bit that's just been forming. So there's two elements for which you can have a go and grab out there. So yeah, that's kind of unfortunately where we may see it. And again, it can wick down, it just can't close below, as far as I'm concerned. Tom, I'm just here to say you're looking marvelous as ever. You're a good man, Tom. Also, 67 band of liquidity has really shown strength and leads up 2-0. There we go. You see, someone out here over me. Yeah. So there is that band of 67, which we talked about last week and taken out. I actually didn't have, it's not that I didn't have time because I've had all day. I didn't bother looking to see how that's been built up since it was taken out back end of last week. But there would have been something that would have reformed here, and it's whether, again, we see something that's been building down here. But I appreciate the comments. So we'll have a... No, let's do it now. Let's go on slower time frames for Bitcoin. We've done the daily, we've done the 12. Let's have a look at the 4. Let's try and have a look, see, where we can have our battlegrounds next. And I think this tells it all right now, that this 4 hour, now that we're looking with EMAs and everything else, one, a lot of price indecision, because we can see wicks both to the north and to the south with relatively small bodies. I accept that we've still got 37 minutes on this current candle, and it's looking like the body's going to close to the top. But everything is battling and being squeezed now between the 10 and the 50 EMA. And it has been since the beginning of this week. So we had markets open, US markets just about this candle here, comes back down, bounces off the 50. And then since then, it's just been squeezing in and around this area. But the 50 is holding it. And then for me, on the short term, and until that breaks, I'm not planning on necessarily doing anything with what, I wouldn't do anything with what Bitcoin I hold anyway, but I wouldn't be having a knee-jerk reaction until that breaks. Now, hey, some people always say, how are you going to catch it too late? That's fine. But right now, how I look at things, the 50 is holding it. The 10 and the 20 are weaker EMAs, in my opinion, than the 50, although I give the 10 its respect because it's still pushing the price down from the north there. And we're just in a little bit of an indecision. Now, for me, it's a bit of a slow news week as well, so that might just be adding to, people are just now waiting. And I'm going to talk about reasons why we might see a reaction in the upcoming weeks later on. But the biggest one out there is 2 weeks today. It is the US election. 1 day after that, or 2 days after that, the Federal Reserve announces what they're going to do with their rates. So 2 weeks is a long time for Bitcoin. Of course it is. But whether or not there's just a bit of, we're just going to wait and see and how those are playing out, maybe so, but again, nothing for me necessarily to worry about. In terms of getting excited for a move to the north, it absolutely has to break 67,600. And to be honest with you, the 20 EMA is so close to it at the moment. Let's just call it 67,800, closing above that, building off before we're going to be getting any kind of real excitement there. I don't think there's too much difference to see on the 1 hour. You can kind of actually see now. Of course, the 200 is going to be there because I've just dropped it down by a factor of 4, so 50 times 4 is 200. So that's where we're seeing this here. But you can see the 200's holding it, And now the 10 and the 20 are also picking up the price. But like with everything else, we've now got the 50 to get through. So it's a constant battle with a lot of these. Going back to Bitcoin, I'll do the other altcoins a little bit later on, but I kind of just wrote a couple of things that I wanted to talk about down here in terms of reasons to be bullish. And I'm not saying they are all reasons to be bullish. These are just things that I want to talk about. We'll talk about the US elections 2 weeks today, as we mentioned. This isn't new, that's why it's not in the news, but China last month did turn the money printer on. Now, some people would suggest that the amount they put on wasn't that much. You know, I can't remember now, was it 100 billion or something like that? But they've started to turn the money print on. They know that they need to do something for their economy to get that going, which is just going to lead to further global liquidity around there, in which obviously will find its way magically into the US stocks markets, bonds, whatever, and some of it will filter off, I'm sure, into crypto. There's rumors abound that China's going to unban the mining of crypto, or mining of Bitcoin. It's probably mining of it all. Following some comments that have been made, that's been getting people excited. It is still a rumor, but you know, when China banned it, we saw the market absolutely dump. That was what was led to believe to be the crash of April and May in 2021. And so an unbanning may have the opposite effect. FTX payouts, federal rate cut, and then the MCK Rib TA, which is pretty fascinating. But I'm sorry, I know I said I wouldn't try and do this, but we've got to talk about October, haven't we? Because last time we looked at October, it was red. Now it's green. And had this have been done over the weekend, Adam, I am going to talk about the Dixie when I get onto it a bit later on, so I will get onto that in a moment. Had this have been Sunday, this would have been 9-10%, looking quite healthy. We obviously had that correction, and, you know, arguably, we've still got 9 days until October closes, so anything can happen. But we're starting to see the green roots of October. Now, you know, if things were to close as it is at the moment, it's not the worst green month we've seen, but it's not, you know, it's nowhere near some of these stellar ones we've seen even recently. And I think the one that everyone is harking on back to at the moment is 2023. But I do remind people that that was when the ETFs were going to be confirmed that they were going to happen, and the hype about when they were going to happen was going fever pitch. But it's still looking relatively good. And to try and put that into a bit of perspective, hopefully you can see this. I'm just going to check over there. Yeah, I think you can see the final one as well. My head's not in the way. So all the blue vertical lines here are just Octobers. And then, you know, you could argue I'm cherry picking here. Where it's not seen a positive return, I've not bothered. But, you know, look at these Octobers. We've got, what, one? I mean, even that October was a green October, although the months immediately afterwards weren't. But, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, not that one, 7, 8, 9 of the last 10 Octobers have been green. And then if we have a look at some of the gains, you know, 240%, 680%, 345%, 520%, 50%, 180, give or take, percent increase. So, you know, 90% of the time we see a green October. Of that 90%, a further 90% then leads to, is it 90? No, 80%. Nope, 70%. There's 3 of them that don't. So it's 2/3 lead to the market. Then, well, I think massively, even 50%. I'd take from our current levels. That'd take us to 100k. Leads to a massive rally, which then ultimately has a bigger effect on the crypto market. So even just playing the numbers, actually, maybe now, if you are not happy with how much Bitcoin or crypto you have, maybe now really is the time to start ensuring that you do have your portfolio in a position where you're comfortable with, because we can always get out if we need to. Of course, we're not going to get out at the most ideal time, but the speed in which sometimes these Octobers move, if you're not quite positioned right, it can be quite intimidating to find an opportunity to get back in. So I think you do need to just sort of bear that one in mind. As I mentioned here with China and their money printer just firing off, it's several stimulus measures that they were introducing last month. I don't know if I scroll through here, it gives me the figures of how much. a $420 billion stimulus package. They're saying 113 there, so it must have been over a couple of them. But, you know, I mean, probably for China, that is not a huge amount. But if that was in the UK markets, that would be pretty impressive. And then to go on to the unban of crypto mining, and it is a rumor, and I'm not saying that Bitcoin LFG is the most reliable source, but a lot of people have gone on to mention it, and the reason is because one of the courts in China acknowledged Bitcoin as a legal digital currency, and the thought process was, well, okay, if you're now saying it is legal, is that just sort of a softening to sort of like be able to roll back the banning of mining in the first place? We'll have to wait and see. But, you know, this kind of news event in a bull market can certainly help snowball things. So that, I think, if it did come true, would certainly give an initial immediate reaction to where the market is going. And then people have been talking about FTX. Now, yes, last month we had the courts agree to the restructuring of the bankruptcy and paying all of the outstanding creditors. I don't know if it's creditors or debtors. I think it's creditors. Anyway, out there, and everyone's throwing, you know, their hats in the air. 16 billion is coming into the market. We talked about this at the time. You know, I think Bitcoin does about 30 odd billion in trading volume every single day. So 16 billion is not a huge amount there. And actually, when you now look at the details of it, so what's going to happen is before the end of this year, so in the next couple of weeks, anyone that is owed $50,000 or less will get their funds. But they actually only reckon that's going to be about $1.2 billion worth. So the remaining, you know, $12 billion or however much it is, isn't actually going to come out until 2025. And we don't know the date of that, and it's also going to be staggered. So this 16 billion is going to be fairly diluted and distributed across, you know, several weeks, if not months. And so the actual, you know, purchasing ability, if everyone was to just flush that back into the market, I don't think it's going to have the impact that everyone does. But 1.2 billion and, you know, the positive news effect around FTX making those payments in the upcoming week may just be able to, if nothing else, put that to bed. I still think they've been massively stung. There's something in here. You know, they're only getting about 120% of what they originally had at the time that the claim was filed in November 22. And you think about where Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin's gone since then, from what, $17,000, $18,000 to $67,000. So yeah, they could argue they weren't going to get anything, but that's going to be a bitter pill to take. Maybe people will be YOLOing in to try and make that back. Who knows? And then we've got the federal rate announcements. This is for the 7th. So as we mentioned, the election happens on Tuesday the 5th. Not going to find out a winner, unlikely to find out a winner until Wednesday the 6th. And then the FOMC makes their federal rate announcement on the 7th. Now, what's interesting is obviously last month, the Federal Reserve made their first cut, and it got the market pretty darn excited, actually. And everyone was speculating that not only will we see a cut in November, but it will be a double cut. It will be another 50 basis point cut. And so even a month ago, it was a kind of a coin flip, 50-50. That's kind of started to soften a little bit. Still think we're going to get a rate cut. I mean, the Federal Reserve, the FOMC, have kind of said that they're targeting around about 100 basis points over the next 3 or 4 meetings. So they kind of need to do on average around about 25 basis points per meeting. But we're now looking a bit more soberistic, don't know if that's a word, at a sort of a 90% chance of just a 25 basis points cut, which, I mean, I don't know how the market's going to react to that, because there'll be some that just want to see it cut as quickly as possible, bring down the cost of borrowing money with, you know, off the back of, well, wait a second, you know, the economy is strong and the market can take that. So let's just get it over with and get going again. And so they might not like that it's only 25. And where do I see it? I think as long as, however long it takes, you know, I'll rephrase that. If what they're scheduling is 100 basis points, within the next 4 meetings, which takes us to February, I think, then as long as they hit that, they've done what they've said. So if it's nothing, I think that'll be bad. If it's 25, I think, the market will feel pretty positive about that. They were still moving in the right direction. There is some other data, and we talk about it all the time, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but there's definitely still some data with the likes of inflation, still a little sticky, not quite coming down, stubbornly staying about in the mid-2 section. Unemployment data is, it depends how it's being reported, but not quite as easy to justify where that's going. And then, of course, there's the big R word, which, they're trying their damnedest to avoid. And so, we'll see how that one goes. I think they're going to have a wider impact potentially on the overall market, which then obviously is going to lead to fall off in Bitcoin. But my big canary in the coal mine is BlackRock, and BlackRock is still buying. And yesterday alone, $330 million worth of BTC they bought. They still believe in this asset. They still believe they believe in Bitcoin. They certainly do not believe in Ethereum. No one does, because no one's buying it. But we believe that if Bitcoin does well, cryptos are going to do well. So as long as the likes of BlackRock believe in Bitcoin, then there's going to be speculation in other altcoins, which gives us an opportunity to make some money. And so until I start to see day after day after day after day of red, I'm kind of happy with where we are. And in the last 7 days, BlackRock have really turned it up a notch. I mean, there was a period in September where I think we went 21, 26 days without a purchase, and now they're making up for it. In the last week, we have to do some quick maths here. It's certainly over $1 billion. What's that going to be? 600. That's billion. 1.25, nearly $1.3 billion in the last week on Bitcoin. That's just BlackRock alone. And Grayscale are not selling. They're hardly selling, really. Only them 4 billion, 5 billion, sorry, million yesterday. We don't know what today's data is, but a positive sign there. And I'm not talking about the supply squeeze of them buying all of this. I mean, if Grayscale ain't selling it, BlackRock have to be buying it from somewhere, and yet the price is still suppressing, which is interesting. Are we going to see that explosion happen at some stage? Is the price being artificially kept low to allow these things to come in? And I don't want to get stuck down market maker and those news articles that potentially could just be out there to try and put some fear into people to sell them or what have you. But if you truly believe in Bitcoin like we do, hey there, Jamie, I will forgive you, seeing as it is probably 6 a.m. Where you are. But if you truly believe in Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, then I don't think this is the worst time you can be buying. I think this is one of the best times you can be buying should you have anything. Because historically, and we have to, we can only go off what's happened before or information that is presented to us. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a forecast, it's just a prediction. We can't all be right all the time. But this time of year has always been, I'll rephrase that. This time of year has generally been a very positive outcome, not just for Bitcoin, but for the cryptocurrency market. This month within a 4-year cycle has also historically been a very positive time to get in. And it's the start of when we start to see these parabolic runs. And there's no guarantee that this cycle is going to be like the previous 4-year cycles, of course. But there have been similarities that we've gone through over the last 6 months, maybe even over the last 3 years, trying to justify how we've got to where we've got at the moment. But I'm definitely tidying up my portfolio at the moment. For those in the UK, part of me is also kind of selling and buying and whatever I need to do before the 30th of October. We find out what happens to capital gains. I'm just going to cross my fingers that they don't retroactively send that back a little bit, and I can just get to a point where I don't have to do too many trades after this, and I'm not subject to moving crypto around, therefore being subject to capital gains tax at the higher rate, whatever it's going to end up being. So that's a UK specific element, but there's still a lot there. And if all of that can't convince you that now is the right time, then let me introduce you to the greatest and cleanest bit of TA I've ever seen before, the MCIRB. I'd never seen this indicator before, but it's real. The McRib, the McDonald's McRib returns. So it returned in October 2020. Look at the returns. It returned in October 2023. Look at the returns. And what did McDonald's go and do? They knew that cryptocurrency needed a pump, Bitcoin particularly, so they brought out the McRib again this month. And hey, I mean, if it's worked twice before, I mean, sadly, it did create the McDonald's arches there. And if I was any good at graphic design, I would superimpose McDonald's on there. But we can at least try and ride it up in the first place. So if nothing else can convince you, take a trip down to McDonald's, grab a probably very underwhelming, unless you're hungover, McRib sandwich, and know the fact that you're contributing to Bitcoin's price skyrocketing up. Adam, I will come back to yours. Tom's put Dixie rally seems to be absorbing a lot of liquidity from the euro and the pound. I think that's probably the most intelligent thing I've ever heard you say. So well done there. Let's have a look at the Dixie before we get into anything else, because let's get on a wider time frame. So we haven't really talked about the last time we spoke about the Dixie was when it was down at 100. And it has had a very strong bounce from there, which, you know, maybe we shouldn't be so surprised, because as when we did previously mention it, it's a decent support level. It's had those, and it's had a very nice clean bounce. What is interesting, though, is everything else seems to be moving up at the same time. Normally what happens, the Dixie goes up and everything else tanks, but do I have gold on here? Let's go into traditionals. So yeah, we've got the Dixie. S&P still rallying high. I mean, a couple of days ago it hit a new all-time high. It's fallen down a little bit at the moment. Nasdaq hasn't retaken its all-time high yet, but it's a gnat's breath away from it. What, 300 points away? Where's gold? I mean, look at gold, absolutely flying, 2,745. And a little in-joke for some people that are watching at the moment, there was not so long ago where people were trying to convince us when it was down at 1,600 that it was time to short gold, November 2022. And since then, it has absolutely skyrocketed up. Silver as well, flying up, nearly at $35 an ounce, another all-time high. So everything's moving in an upward direction. And the euro is doing the absolute opposite, as Tommy has just said, falling perfectly down the way we go. So it's a bit of an interesting time within where that's going. I don't really follow the stock markets as well as I should. There's an incredible amount of similarities between what they're doing and where Bitcoin finds itself, and we haven't had that disconnect. I sort of laugh under my breath every so often that I hear people say, Bitcoin's moved one way and the S&P's moved the other, so we finally see the disconnect. No, we haven't. You just take it out onto a higher time frame and you'll see these things still move in the same direction. But what I would say is, for every expanding market, doesn't matter, whether you're looking at the daily, the weekly, the monthly, expansion is always met with a retracement. So as good as this is going to be, at some stage we're going to see a correction. I can't tell you how far it's going to be, but the correction that we're going to see in the traditional markets will, in my opinion, and maybe there's some of you watching now that disagree, but it will impact what Bitcoin does. So what we want to see is we want to see interest rates come down. We want to see inflation stay in around that 2% that the government is talking about. We don't really care who gets in from a presidential point of view. And I need to go back on to talk about the presidents in a moment, or president and the election. As long as they turn the money printers on. That's all we really care about. Put your politics, the political agenda, which side of the aisle you want to stand on, doesn't matter. We're just talking about trading, whether that be in traditional crypto markets. We just want the money printers on. We want low interest rates and money printers turned on. And then we're going to see these things fly. And, if that can postpone for another 12 months, because 12 months, we're going to be in Q4 of 2025, which is the end of the 4-year cycle. Fine. It may happen sooner, and we've talked, and I'm sure at the start of next year, we'll talk again about how we can try and spot some signs for how, if we need to get out early, or if we just should get out slightly early and start edging out. But yeah, that's sort of where we're looking at. And 12 months is not a long time. 24 months ago, where we were in the depths of FTX, and that feels like that's flown by since then. But yeah, that's where it is. Let me just talk about the election. And this is what took up all of my news feed on Twitter and other things. I find it fascinating because I don't really have skin in the game, and I don't watch a lot of mainstream media news based in America. So I don't really know, but I find it fascinating that when you look at the mainstream media, they all have Harris ahead. Whether it's slightly, they all do. Harris is the light blue in this one here. I don't know where it sits. Oh yeah, and here it is here. But then when you look at the money markets, where people are gambling, betting, they all have Donald Trump as the favorite. Now, I don't have any American sports books open, so I couldn't go onto those. I've just gone onto a few gambling sites in the UK. But I always think that the money markets generally know, or at least have a better understanding of human nature and how people are voting, because at the end of the day, the BBC may not lose anything if Harris doesn't get in. But if Bet365 or all of the other ones put the odds at a wrong position, they're going to stand to lose a hell of a lot of money. And so, yeah, I take with, a decent pinch of salt here that everybody else is calling it the other way. Now, what I would say is, for me, because I'm not there, it's too close to call. If I was just solely based it on Twitter, Donald Trump by a landslide, but I'm trying sort of temper that with, it's Elon's Twitter now, and perhaps it's the time for the right wing to take over. That's probably where my feed's coming from. I mean, but if you look at, most of them are saying it's within a point or two. This one here was interesting. So this is the Rasmussen report. They have Trump winning, but only by a percent. But then when you go on Polymarkets, this is probably what a lot of you who are on Twitter may see. Donald Trump's at 64.4%. Was no 65.9% now? It's on here, which is beyond a landslide in terms of victory there. I'm just going to wait and see. We'll find out what happens. Everyone knows what happened in 2020 and the accusations that were thrown around afterwards. If people start to believe that this polling's right, and it turns out that it's not the other way, this is going to be a lot of ammunition for a lot of pent-up aggression in America. So that could have a massive impact on the markets. And ultimately, that's why I'm in it for, because I hate to say it, but if Trump wins, I think the markets react positively. I think if Harris wins and there's enough tinfoil hat belief that it was another rigged election, do we have another January 6th incident again? And what's that do to the markets? And unfortunately, we've always got to just play those kind of elements out within our mindset of where we're going. And yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Who would I prefer to win? I prefer Donald Trump. I think he's going to be better, not only for crypto markets, but generally for traditional markets. I think the policies that he is at least proposing sound more logical, although I accept that I'm probably just watching sound bites of both candidates rather than the actual full interviews, presentations, whatever it is that they do. Right, let's leave politics aside. I always hate talking about it. I'm fascinated. I will be one of those saddos in the UK that will stay up and watch the results. I watch all the UK elections. I just stay up till like 7 a.m. because I just like seeing all that stuff come through. I'll do the same for this, I'm sure, though some states do take a couple of days to call. So I might be left the hook there. There weren't too many questions. John asked about runes even last week, and I said I was going to talk about it. I didn't really cover it as much as I wanted, and you've also asked like how to buy and sort of that step by step. I will point you in that direction of that video I did last year. Again, so please check that out. I'll link it in Discord so you can see it. I mean, what are runes? So runes are like an upgrade from the ordinals that came out last year, sort of more efficient. And it effectively allows people to create. I mean, ordinals allowed inscriptions, creating NFTs and everything else. And the guy who invented it, Casey, someone, I can't remember his surname. I'm sure you can Google it. He said, "Oh no, we can do better." And after the halving, almost immediately after halving, he brought out this new protocol, which was runes, which effectively allowed them to make fungible, so not non-fungible, fungible tokens. So a bit like ERC20 tokens, but this is BRC20, which led to the rise and the creation of thousands of meme coins on the Bitcoin network. And that's ultimately what these runes are. You can buy them by going to sites like Magic Eden. You can go in like OKX and probably like OpenSea and all of that kind of stuff, and just purchase them from there. Some of them will have great following. Some of them may even try and convince the world that they have a use case. I haven't dipped my toe into any meme coins on the Runes protocol or anything like that, so I don't know too much about it. If you wanted a step-by-step how to buy, I'd say go back to that previous Avenger video that I did, because I kind of did it. It was for ordinals because I don't think Runes had come out, but it was all about how you set up the wallet, go onto Magic Eden, and go through it there, which is exactly the same process. So yeah, take a look there. Adams asked if I can have a look at Beam Gaming token, which I will do. I've got that one lined up to go through. And then nobody put their name here, and then reading why, probably just want to keep it anonymous, but I understand. I keep messing up trades and sidesteps. Whatever I do, the market does the opposite. Do you have any advice? And it's difficult because I mess up sidesteps. If we look at Tau, prime example, I probably through overconfidence, if nothing else. But let's just take it down to the daily. I don't like it. Let me just do clean just for a second. I'll come back to market maker chart in a moment. So I was fortunate enough to sort of sidestep this part down here, and even had an opportunity to sidestep here and down here. So that led me to probably believe I had bigger ability than I actually did. And so, I sort of remember buying it, oh no, it wasn't that one, down here at like 220, being able to sell, and then watching this go. I remember being live watching it there and not buying back in, and then it shot up here and I bought back in. So that was, ultimately a bit of a loss. And then I tried to do it again, missed the bottom, and ended up buying back in here. So whilst I didn't undo everything from here, I got caught out at the end. And the point I'm making with that is, I don't care who you are, I don't care how good a trader you are, unless you are from the future and have an almanac, you're going to get some wrong. So, I don't mean to say pull on your big point pants and get over it. There's obviously lessons to be learned with it, but don't beat yourself up just because you get a trade wrong. And sadly, what I found is, almost a rule of three. It's not one that goes wrong. It's a couple that go wrong in a row. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad trader. It doesn't mean that the premise of what you did to take that trade was necessarily wrong. Just sometimes TA doesn't plan out like that. Now, where I do tell you to pull your big boy pants on though is, and I've never really been an advocate for this because I did it to start off with, and I end up getting, if you're going to follow someone's trade, for me, that's the worst thing you can possibly do. And it's the worst thing you can possibly do for probably three reasons. One, you don't know the mindset of the person that has just set the trade. And, you don't know if there are things going on in their personal life that may ultimately impact the decision that they're making. Or, you don't know realistically, unless you're following what's how earlier before they did the trade that you're now following and they've announced. Secondly, you don't know when they're going to initially get back in, and potentially you don't really understand why they've taken the trade. Now, they're important because if you're sidestepping particularly, you need to get back in. Otherwise, it's not a sidestep, it's a sell. So if you don't understand the premise of the trade, whether that be through it not being explained very well, or even if it has been explained, you still don't understand it, then you're not going to understand if the premise of the trade has actually been rejected. And no, that means that you are at a further disadvantage, because you may be looking at the chart and see, if you had understood it, see that sooner, react to it, and then get back in. You're actually waiting for whoever told you the original trade to get back in. And that's why I don't necessarily follow people's trades. I just do my own thing. And sometimes they go right, sometimes they go wrong. And that's all, part of the trading. So going back to sort of, what advice would I give? Look, how many times have you realistically messed up? And you just got to ask yourself, well, why am I messing up? And you've just got to have your big boy, big girl pants on and be honest to yourself. Like, am I messing up because I have no idea what I'm doing and I'm just following someone blindly hoping it's going to hit? Or am I messing up just because I planned out the trade, I followed my thought process through why I've taken that trade, and the market's just gone the wrong way, sorry. Because they have two, the answers, they're still the same in the sense that you lost the trade, but how you got there and how you should continue have two completely different outcomes. And so that's what I do. What I would say is, if you're feeling that you're stinging and it's hurting, don't revenge trade. It's hard because the same setup may present itself and like, right, I'm going to go in, but I'm also going to go in harder. I'm going to put in more so I can not only make some money, but recover what I lost. That's where it tends to hurt for me, or hurt in the past. And I don't leverage trade anymore. I dipped my toe back into it a couple of weeks ago, but I got out just because, one, I wanted to put the money elsewhere, but two, I just feel uncomfortable with doing it. And there's plenty of other ways to make money. 90% of crypto holders will just make money from buying and holding and then selling at some stage. And, going back to, is now the right time to get in? If we are going to see a cycle like we've seen previously, being in now, and also, let's face it, months beforehand, because this isn't when you've just entered the market, that move up that we should hopefully all see is going to be fantastic for us all. And so trying to just squeeze a little bit extra out can just put your mindset completely wrong. So that's all I can say. If you are absolutely happy with following people's trade advice, go for it. Just take the ownership and accept that you are relying on someone else's information. Don't go blaming them when it goes wrong, because you have to accept that trading does go wrong sometimes, and it can go wrong a number of times in a row, but you have to add into that you weren't bothered to learn and to try and find that information out yourself. Sticking your nuts on the line and telling everybody what you think is going to happen, it can be very humbling very quickly, especially if you tell everybody you think it's going to go one way and it immediately goes the other. It is not a pretty thing to do, but I'll leave it at that. Let me just Alan's put, best thing in the information I can give you from being on the ground in America is that while I've met very, very people that have voted for Biden, they're now all going to vote for Trump. I've not met one person that's going to vote for Trump that is now going to vote for Harris. Do with that information as you will. Okay, fair enough. Do you still have a percentage of your TAO out of the market, or are you back in? Yes, how can I put it? Yes, I do have a percentage of my TAO out of the market, but I've also sold other assets that I plan on using for TAO that I haven't put into the market. So my DOT, for example, that fully unstaked recently. I haven't sold it yet, and I'll explain why in a moment. We go through some some altcoin TA, but I'm going to sell that. I'm not going to sell it all, but I'm going to sell some, and a lot of that will go into TAO. So I've got money on the side to put into TAO. Of the original TAO that I had, let's say a week ago when I was back fully in the market, I'm probably 20% out. And I've never been 100% out of TAO, the whole time, from 700 down to 200 and back up to 600, 700 and back down again. And that's because I don't know when the market's going to really move, and I don't want to totally mess it about. So I am a little bit out. And as I said at the beginning of the call, the last 48, 72 hours have been the hokey cokey for me, in and out, in and out. And that's stupid. That, I should have conviction in what I see. I've been staring at the charts too much, convincing myself it's going to go one way. And then actually what I originally thought was going to happen, in the fact that I do think it's going to go down. And we'll go through that in a moment. So I had to then sell again and get back up. But let's have a look at Tau. Let's get a better chart up for this. Let's go with the good old classic market makers. Tau on. Oh, this is Tau. Okay, so this is Tau on the hourly. And we can kind of see sort of, you know, the hokey cokey that we're talking about. You can probably guess where things were happening, whether it was on the hourly or the 4 hourly. You know, we broke above this and I was like, ooh, are we going to stay above it? Should I get back in? It came back down, retested it, and I got back in stupidly because actually then it just fell away. So I got back out again. But it is what it is. And now I look at this chart and what do I see? And what I will say is, yes, we've lost to 50, we've lost to 20, we've lost to 10. We've actually bounced off the 200 at the moment. Now it's still, you know, early days on this next candle. It's literally just reopened. So we don't know. And it is in a downtrend. And I'm not saying that a low test has any credence in this whatsoever, but it's hit the 200 EMA. And, you know, 200 EMA, fairly decent. It's not bad. It's been a while since it's got down there. So it could be a little bit of a bounce. Now, I'm not saying it's going to recover and here we go, $800. But, you know, even on the hourly, you can kind of see, and I know there was a notification that went out about sell of Tau, and I just initially looked at it. I was on the 4 hour beforehand. I'm on the 1 hour. So that 200 is now the 800. And I don't really think that's the right time to get out. I think there's an opportunity for this to come back up into this noise that we've seen for the last 2 days, and then it fall back down. So for those of you that didn't get out immediately, I mean, it's only $5-6, may not be that large amount, but I think this is a more realistic opportunity for it to get back. And so it's a case of, you know, understanding where the trade is. Now I understand from Simon, he was like, it's a breach of a support, I'm getting out. It's absolutely fine. Just, I look at things a little bit different and on lower time frames, and I just think, well, actually, likelihood here is red vector candle, you know, off a 200 EMA, it's probably going to get recovered, and then we'll look for some sort of rejection. And I wouldn't rule out that we don't see actually a recovery back to the 50 EMA of 560 before it rolls over and falls away. If we just take it back up to the daily and just have a look at, you know, some of the other things that we've seen here. So I think this was what was concerning Simon. That might be on the 12 hour. Can I get this to line up a little bit better? I think so. I mean, that's what I'd go body to body. I don't know why I'm going wick to wick. I mean, this kind of shows you why I got in and then got back out. But at the moment, you know, we're on the 12 hour, we're below the 50. I'm not sure what the logic was there. I suppose just, you know, we broke through it, wait for that candle to close, new candle, Kobo'd off it. I suppose that's the logic of getting out there. In terms of where do I see it going, I'm going to stay on the daily because I just want to draw the fibs, but obviously we can drop onto lower time frames afterwards. I mean, that's what I see if we take it from this swing low. If we take it down from this one, then it's probably a sort of a more accurate picture. It has come down. We test the 50 MA. Let me just make sure it's lined up. So we've lost the 50 MA. That 520 I talked about at the beginning of the call, but 514 is a more accurate picture. It kind of lines up with this noise here. We did lose it, I know, but that's it. But should we break that? 440, I think, is it's a 382 level. It's kind of where the strength is because this is a 12-hour chart. That 200 EMA is going to catch up with that there. I think that's, you know, 440, if we can't hold 520, let's say, is where I'd be looking to go. So that's sort of, for me, I'm going to see how it reacts at 520. And maybe I'll just get back in there, but we start to lose that. I'm holding out to 440, and I'm probably going to start putting in some of my purchases in and around that level there. And then these are some of the other ones. And, you know, 50% retracements down at 400, which, you know, we talk about quite often in terms of sort of 50% pullback. That's not out of the ordinary. And to be fair, you've got to be fair. Even if we talk about 618, I mean, look at, you know, talk about coming down and bouncing off previous resistance. I mean, it's going to hurt. Of course it is. But can you realistically rule it out? Not necessarily. The other thing that sort of caught my eye, and it is just something that catches your eye more than it's a carbon copy, but this here, and I'll zoom out in a second, and this here, it feels very similar in terms of, structure. Kind of wicky, sort of leading up with a crescendo and then sort of starting to fall away. So leading up here, wicky, starting to now fall away. I showed you last week, can't remember if putting it back on, but you can just trust me, it was there. We had the bearish divergence with the RSI price action with volume falling away as well, which kind of made me believe, which is why I did take that initial get the hell out last week. And that still stands. We're going to have to wait a couple more days minimum to see if that bearish diversion has broken, because, it's daily candles. We need that to break. But, the reality of it is, that's still there. So all of these targets kind of tie in, and we're not even talked about the fact, look at the amount of green vector candles that are available to be recovered. And we know, look, the previous vector candles that haven't been recovered are down at 100, but in and around here, plenty of action. Back at 100, not many people were talking about Tau. So those that got in early have got away with it. People have been talking about Tau in that 300 to 700 range a lot. So there's a lot more activity in around here. And so it wouldn't surprise me to see those get taken out. But that being said, the first 45 minutes of this call, we might be ready for a move upwards. That's why we're only 20% out of what we have. And if it drops massively, I've got dollars on the sideline, which I can, utilize to get in there. So we'll talk about Polkadot because, I had to wait a month for this to unstake, which is obviously an incredibly painful time when you look at the price there was sort of running around $5. And since that time, it got to $3 and it's started to recover. And I was, it's come free, I'll sell it today. But that kind of caught my eye. I was like, why sell there on the daily chart? Granted, it's not the strongest support line, but I might as well just wait to see what it does over the next couple of days. Maybe we see a move back up to recover this vector zone. The principle is exactly the same as where I saw it before. I'm going to look to sell minimum of 50% of what I have left and not put it back into DOT. The remaining part, I probably will. You can call me an idiot, and maybe it's wrong, and I'm married to a bag that I probably shouldn't be, but there's just an element of just some form of diversification that I feel quite happy with. Whether or not I want to keep it that many DOT, 25% of my original portfolio is still a hell of a lot of DOT. So maybe I'll look to take that down to 10% or something, just in case, little bag. Casper. So again, Casper, we talked about earlier on today. This is on the log chart. The previous chart I showed you was linear. But even on the log chart, some sort of bottoming pattern here. We've broken back through the 10. We are, classically on the daily rejected off the 20 EMA. Take that down onto a sort of a lower time frame here, 4 hour now, and we can actually see some nice structure. Attacking the 50 EMA, coming back down using the 10 and the 20. Attacking the 50 EMA, top of the cloud this time before coming back down using the 10 and 20. Now we've cleared the cloud. Wouldn't be surprised if we come back down and retest maybe the cloud or the 50 EMA line again before building up some momentum. And my target really initially is going to be this 200 EMA. So with some of that DOT and maybe some of the others that I look to sell, maybe looking to get in with a bit more Casper actually. Near something I'm going to keep hold of, and near might be one that I actually regret keeping hold of because it's probably been my best altcoin performer this year. Probably has, to be fair. You've got to be fair. And so I'm just holding on to it. Maybe I should take some profit and put in something else. But again, when we did have that run up early part of this year, it really moved. It showed real strength as in terms of a protocol. It's climbing the ranks. It's got high volume within it. And so part of me just think, it's rebranded itself as AI as well, so that helps. So part of me just thinks, actually, I think there's still potential to take this on. And whilst I am trying to jig around a lot of other things, this has already made me an awful lot of profit, talking about, raising capital gains tax in a week's time or what have you. Do I really want to be messing around with this, or just sit and hold through it all? So I'm kind of just waiting on that one. Render, I only hold a little bit of this, but maybe this is the one where I keep the near and I sell the render and I look to. My worry is, what happens if we're wrong about Tau and I put everything into Tau and then I'm just left, holding it? And there's plenty of reasons why Tau is going to be good, of course. But people said that about Neo. People said that about Tron. People said that about Polkadot, So there's always that part in me that just has that. Getting onto Beam, I think it's Beam X, the gaming one. I kind of remember it from the sort of like the umbrella symbol. And to be honest with you, I mean, it's on the daily and we'll have a look a bit lower. I think this is looking a pretty decent chart. I got to say, nice bottoming pattern. I don't know if there's been any news in and around this, but a nice bottoming pattern, rally up, come back into the 50 EMA, find support and then move up. And so if this, if this was market maker, we'd have some sort of topping pattern. 1, 2, 3 into the W, 1 up, come back down, might be ready for leg 2 on the way back up here. And so, yeah, I even on the daily, I think this is looking fairly healthy. I don't, as I say, if there's any news that sort of led to believe that, but if this is something you're in or potentially looking to get in, the difference between, it's what, 15 to 18, 19 cents at the moment. So maybe 3 or 4 cents within this, and not the worst difference, but that seems like a clear retest and then a move away from it. We've got a little bit of time to go. It tried to battle the 200 EMA and rejected from it, but caught itself. But, this candle is above it at the moment. 4 hours to go. A couple more days of this, seeing that just bounce off that, I think that could be a nice move up for you there. It's Jamie's story of my life. Hey, story of my life too with the trading. It really is. And I've had a few people, reach out to me in the group just about trading. And it can just be difficult sometimes. In sideways markets as well, you think you know what's going to happen in one token, and it does completely different to the rest of the market. So I just reiterate, don't ever beat yourself up. And as long as you've gone in it in understanding what you've done, you've not just blindly gone into it because someone told you to, or you rolled the dice and it said it, then, just keep going at it. Lower the risk if you need to, and you'll find that things will come good. Also bounce off pre-resistance from the 10th of October. I'm not sure which token that one is there, Jamie, but thanks for that one. Anything else we want to talk about? ETH. I mean, I still think ETH is struggling. My personal opinion with it, it's not taken off in terms of the ETF, which was hoping to drive some volume. I think Solana, whatever you think about Solana, it is getting traction at the moment. It's getting traction for cheap fees. Tau, okay, fair enough. It's getting traction for cheap fees, but also, it's where most meme coins are created. So there's an actual use case for having it. Yes, of course, meme coins are created on the Ethereum network, but it's slower. It still costs more despite some of the recent upgrades. What I will say, though, from a TA point of view, again, potentially some sort of inverted head and shoulders maybe here. Finding support. That's not a neckline, by the way. That's just finding support on the 800 EMA on the daily support-ish. I know it's breached it a couple of times. Bounced off it, cleared the 50. It's now been squeezed between the 50 and the 200. So, make or break time for it, really. Neckline's kind of here. So it's broken through, Kobo'd back. Maybe now this is the move. And so for anyone that is holding Ethereum, I think there's a potential opportunity there. But just in terms of I think a lot of people would have expected Ethereum to have broken 3,000 long before this. Sadly, it just hasn't. Total 3 we kind of looked at a little bit earlier on, but on the daily, that move up, instead of looking at it from the support and resistance line, that bounce now, nice one when the 50 and the 200 overlapping each other, taking some sort of W double bottom off that, and now just snaking up that 10 quite nicely. I think this is looking a lot healthier. The only thing I would say is I'd like to see a nice strong move. These candles are relatively small, and so it actually, despite it snaking up, it still hasn't really cleared that high or that high, and so we want to see something there. But despite everything that it's doing, that's not it. Dominance. I mean, okay, it's fallen down. It was at 59% last week. Okay, come back down, retested, but we're on our way back up to it. 60% is going to happen. Absolute foregone conclusion. So yeah, in terms of my overall portfolio and where it stands, this is currently how it sits at the moment. So Tau's at just over 40%, NIR's at 25, DOT's at 10, USDT's around about 10%. I've got Render at 3.5. You'll notice I don't have the CAS because I sold that, but I will be looking to buy that back. And memes, interestingly, you know, when I started that out, it's probably around about 6%. And that's just not necessarily me buying more memes, just some nice growth off that over the last few weeks. It's taken that to 11%. I'm not trading those memes like I did in March, sorry, where it's like, you know, we covered it last week, but where we're, you know, buying and selling within 24 hours. A lot of these I've moved to my tangent. They're just going to stay there now. And we'll see what happens at the end of the day. And the Bitcoin BTS, so the business BTC still remains as it sits. I think that's probably everything I got to talk about today. Just say, I'll just put that on full screen. Just say next week will likely be a pre-recorded video done on the day. I'm actually not around. I'm not at my streaming kit next Tuesday night. It's kind of hard to find another night during the week to do it. So I'm going to probably just film something. I might go live whilst I film it. It'll just be during the day, but I'll actually get it out to everyone ready for the 8 o'clock session. Chris has put, are you in used car? I am indeed. I mean, let me just go back and put that on. So these are all the ones I'm in. Actually, there's one more I'm not in here. So I'm in Harry Potter, Obama, Sonic 10 Inu called Bitcoin. So in that. I'm trying to think where I got in it. I actually can't remember now. I'm in Giga. That was around about 3 cents I got in. I'm in HODL, which is half orange drinking lemonade. I got in that up here. See, they don't always win at like 0.007, and it's, you know, lost 2/3 of its value. Only put $300 in, but it is what it is. I'm in Joe Coin. I'm in non-playing character or whatever it is, NPC. I'm in, I don't like to say this one, but I'm in Tardio, SPX, used car. Yeah, used car is coming down, but you know, where did I get in? It's sort of roundabout 0.007. So still, even that is values at double. It had a nice move up here, but as I mentioned last week, sort of we're gonna, if that theory is right and if Muriad is correct, you kind of want to see these healthy pullbacks, but it's actually just going the longer con on terms of every altcoin is a meme coin. These are pretty much 90% plus circulated supply already. And, you know, when retail YOLOs in and tries to make that, you know, 1000x, chances are they're not going to put it into Ethereum to make 1000x. They are, they're going to try and find it on meme coins and popular meme coins. So that's where they sit with those. But yeah, HODL's the only one that's really down for me. Everything, all the other ones, I'm in profit. Oh, and I got Selfie Cat, but I can't find a ticker for it. But for anyone that's interested, let's have a look. I don't think I'm going to buy any more now. Someone pointed out to me that Zappy is now on CoinMarketCap, which it is. So Selfie Dog Coin. I mean, I really am scraping about. But again, I got in at this just under 3 cents a couple of days ago. So, yeah, this move up here. So, you know, it's early days. But, I mean, this is what, you know, one of the things to look for. So circulating supply is 983 million, and there's only 999 million only. And so, yeah. Anyway, that's where that sits. Appreciate everything. I think I'm up to date with all the comments there. So appreciate everyone tuning in for this one. Hope you all have a great week. And if you've got anything, obviously, as I always say every week, tag me in Discord, tag me in a DM or what have you. Trading Pub on Thursday at 1 o'clock. There's that event on at 12:30 as well, which is more for sort of business owners. And then the only thing to say is enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm going to try and catch the end of the Leeds game, and I'll speak to you all soon. Cheers now.